emotions, and I know I've triggered some thoughts because I can feel you churning. But I want to let him get in here. Y'all beard get the that non-ether beard be. I can feel it energetically, like yo.
Yeah.
So I want to pass it over to you and let you talk about that because the energy in motion is the key to master anything in this universe because everything is energy.
Right, right. Just even and just listening to the whole symbiocracy and the dynamic of how the masculine and feminine has related to one another and been conditioned to relate to one another, especially melanated people, and the struggles that me and Cam have had, it has brought me to the awareness of emotional intelligence and just how much of it I did not have. And I want to read the definition because I know as I read the definition and you already had something that you want to share, but it's some things that in order for our relationships, in order for our culture, we're talking about rebuilding, we're talking about restructuring, we're talking about separating ourselves from a patriarchal matrix of a system that really does not have us in the balances as it relates to any types of benefits. So I just want to read it, and then I did have a question. But emotional intelligence, the ability to consider the suffering or feelings of another person as if they were your own. Some people have an innate propensity or an inherent, a natural disposition towards higher emotional intelligence. But as with all people, this emotional maturity or these relationship skills must be cultivated and worked on. And then you say, see, spiritual intelligence and individuation. And my question is, it's simple, but what type of system, because emotional intelligence and this cultivation of being able to be aware, to be sensitive enough. It's crazy because Cam will tease me all the time and say, oh, you're so sensitive, you're so sensitive. But the thing about it is, I be sensitive in the wrong moments. Is that
Yeah.
So in me learning about emotional intelligence and realizing that, hey, a lot of times I don't even have the what's the word? I don't have the awareness to know she may not be feeling a certain touch. Like she deal with what she deal with. She deal with pain. So sometimes I can approach and I could be a little too heavy handed. But that's me not even realizing, hey, right now that is too much. You understand what I'm saying? And so the skill of me having that awareness, being emotionally in touch with myself, that's something that was a challenge and been a challenge for me working it. And so I just want to ask what type of collective system that we can put in place, because I'm just talking about myself. But as I look out, I see a lot of people that struggle with emotional intelligence. But it ain't about me pointing the finger. But again, I want something to say, hey, concretely, this is what I do. Now I do have some practices. We Cam found resources. I found some stuff. So I have some things in place, but I do realize that this is a greater epidemic. And so if you would go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about and speaking to is very important and is fundamental to the future of productive and harmonistic relationships within our families. And what I can do, for some reason I can't remember why I don't have it. I need to really kind of put it back in the Funktionary. I had taken it out when I had gone from one thing to the other, but this is something that I think would I'm going to put back in. But it's the man-woman relationships and their comparative attributes. So what I'm going to do, just if you don't mind, I'll speak to some of that, because from a feminine perspective, the orientation is from core to perimeter. And for the male-based relationships, the masculine-centric is perimeter to core. Yeah. And I'm going to kind of go into explain that. But I'm going to start on the left-hand side and say what the feminine-centric attributes are, and then on right after that, I'm going to say what the corresponding masculine-centric are. So I'm going to do it fairly. I'm not going to have time to, because each one of these can be, needs probably to be unpacked on its own, but we don't have time to do that because there are quite a few. I'll go down. I may not do the whole thing, but I'll do it to establish a rhythm that people can kind of maybe get to understand. But, for females, it's core to perimeter. They relate from within, initially going out. And for men, it's the opposite. They see what they like. We see what we like. And so we operate from the perimeter. Then we go down to the core. So I'm going to start. So from the feminine side, it's spirit to soul to body based, as opposed to body to soul or soul to body based. On the feminine side, there's affective orientation is selflessness, and the affective orientation on the masculine is selfishness. On the left-hand side, with the feminine, the foundation is structure-based, whereas for the masculine, the foundation is content-based. For females, love is typically unconditional, and for males, love, quote-unquote, is typically conditional. For females, they rise into love up through the spirit, and for men, we fall in love down from the soul. Mm-hmm. One for the females is freedom-based. In other words, it's freedom to. For the males, it's freedom-based and it's freedom from. So, quote-unquote. For females, the interaction is intuitive and reciprocal. For men, the interaction is logical and unidirectional. For females, it's solid and mutual fulfillment seeking. For men, it's fragile and unfulfilling at the spirit level. Mm. For the female, it's light, supportive, and unburdensome. For males, it's weighted, smothered, and burdensome. So that's why you see a lot of men that have narcissistic tendencies, because a lot of this stuff is ego-based and ends up in that scenario. For females, it's conflict resolution. It's non-confrontational. For men, it's conflict resolution is confrontational. So there's about, maybe 30 of these different things that I have, but towards the end, I'll just pick out a few other ones, instead of just reading the whole thing. But for females, propensity for essence-based love, and for the men's side, the propensity for ego-based love, as you had mentioned before, Cam. The life orientation for female is more reality-based. The life orientation for men is more truth-based. For females, relationship is value-based in its richness. Men, relationship is inventory-based, with riches. For females, it is being before doing, which is vertical. And for men, it's doing before being, which is more of a horizontal situation. For females, it's into validating before dating. And for men, it's into dating before validating. So there's a list of things that it's not in the current version of the functionary, but I need to do something to put that back in because it's very important. But getting back to you're saying what can you do and what kind of systems? It's important to understand the dynamics between masculine and feminine energy and what we have to do. See, there's so much work that has to be done. There's the inner work, there's the greater work, there's individuation, there's understanding ego. I mean, for instance, in relationships, when you get to meet somebody, it's usually, it's the personality, it's the representative of the person that you're seeing.
Right.
Then some time goes by, then you get the ego-based version of that person. You dig a little bit deeper, then you get more to, the essence of that person. And that's where a lot of the complications, the irritations, and all these other things begin, at that level. Because, our representatives do a good job for ourselves. And so, when we don't understand that a lot of what we're doing is projecting, it's just so much to really unpack with regards to that. But at the end of the day, to answer your question with regards to any type of system, I don't think there's any system that has been created per se. There's resources, there are certain books that have been, or individuals that have some real good insight on it, but a system has not been kind of created. I did have or do have a business concept that speaks to some of what you're talking about, where couples really would go into a place where individuals would I don't want to necessarily give the whole business format away, but the point of, because I still am looking to do it and to potentially maybe even franchise it if I can ever get it up and running. But it speaks directly to informing, educating, and evolving relationships, because at the end of the day, Cam, as you mentioned, I mean, it's difficult enough trying to navigate and doing the work on yourself. Mm-hmm. Then you're having to do like a double Dutch rope, and you're trying to weave in, try to figure out when you can jump in to make that dynamic work. And it's it takes it just takes a lot for that to happen, and you have to be in a space where you understand that. Well, let me put it this way: a lot of times when couples, they break up right before there is going to be a breakthrough. Seen it happen, so many times. It's like you've invested all of that time in each other. You've poured into each other.
Yeah.
And then, they don't understand the ebb and flow of relationships. They will come and they'll say, well, we've been up and down, and then at a dip, maybe the 20th dip that they might be in, is like, I'm done. I'm just not, I can't put in, I can't put in any more work. This is just not working, and so forth and so on. But at the end of the day, whatever you are doing to put in the work for both of you, you're putting in for yourself. And it can only be, you can only be as good to someone else as you are to yourself. Mm-hmm. Self-care is absolutely paramount.
Yeah.
And so these systems that you're talking about, Earnest, have not really been created, but certain things that we need to do to work on ourselves, the individuation process, the the greater work, the inner work that we need to do, working on the shadow selves, our unknown aspects of ourselves, working on those things. Like you say, you can't, those who are unaware of being unaware.
Right,
right.
right. And
All right.
and a lot of things that hit me is because, I deal with young people, and sometimes the only way, the only way that we can transfer messages, thoughts, good patterns, so to speak, is just by showing. But see, that misses a lot of people, because what you do in your house is just going to affect your house. What we our house just will affect our house. But we still have a whole population and collective of young men, young women who want to be able to relate to each other. But like you just said, they not even waiting for the 20 dip. It could be the first or second dip that occurs a couple of months later. But that don't mean that we can't build with each other. We just,
Right.
But it go back to what you're saying. And so that's why I say, in the symbiocracy, we have to have something developed to the point to where it's a curriculum base.
Oh, yeah.
Ideology of how we are to relate, how we relate to ourselves, and then how we relate to somebody else. Because, like y'all saying, it's about the self-realization first. I cannot love her to the fullest if I don't have that love for myself.
And this what happened with us though. I started investing in my self-love and stopped being codependent and people-pleasing and emotionally managing his regulation. And when I stopped, he turned into chaos. It was chaos. It was, and all of that trauma that had been suppressed was just coming out. Anything that I say, it could be used and held against me in the court of law.
Right. Yeah. Well, one thing I want to interject there, the thing about, to a large extent, there's a certain amount of brokenness that exists within, within all of us. And the broken will always love harder than most. Once you've been abused, abandoned, or in the dark, you learn to appreciate everything that shines, whether you make it out of the dark or not. So nothing is more fortified or stronger than a broken man or woman rebuilding his or herself. And so,
I said, yes, I totally agree.